What if I told you that right now, the plant sitting in your room might be watching you, listening to your thoughts, and even responding to your emotions? What if I told you that for over 50 years, scientists have been conducting secret experiments that suggest plants might be far more aware than we ever imagined? And what if I told you that some of these experiments were conducted by a CIA polygraph expert who discovered something so shocking about plants that it challenged everything we thought we knew about consciousness itself? My name is Justo, and 3 months ago, I stumbled down a rabbit hole that completely changed how I see the natural world. It started with a simple question from my daughter: Mom, do you think plants can feel when we talk to them? I laughed it off at first, but something about her innocent curiosity stuck with me. That night, I found myself Googling plant consciousness, and what I discovered kept me awake until 3 a.m. I found stories of plants hooked up to lie detectors, reacting to human thoughts from across the room. I read about experiments where plants seemed to mourn the death of other organisms, where they responded to music, and where they appeared to demonstrate memory and learning. But here's what really hooked me. Half the scientific community was calling this groundbreaking research, while the other half was calling it complete pseudoscience. So I decided to investigate for myself. I spent the next 3 months diving deep into the research, interviewing scientists, conducting my own experiments, and trying to separate fact from fiction. What I discovered will shock you, and by the end of this 4-part series, you'll never look at a plant the same way again. Let me start with the moment that changed everything. It was February 2nd, 1966, and a man named Cleve Baxter was about to make a discovery that would spark decades of controversy. Backster wasn't a botanist or a biologist. He was a polygraph expert for the CIA, someone who spent his days detecting lies using machines that measured human electrical responses. But on this particular morning, he was about to discover that humans weren't the only living things that produced measurable electrical responses. Backster had just watered a Dracaena plant in his office and, on a whim, decided to attach his polygraph electrodes to one of its leaves. He was curious about how long it would take for the water to travel from the roots to the leaves. What happened next would change his life forever. The polygraph pen started moving, creating patterns that looked remarkably similar to human emotional responses. Intrigued, Backster decided to test something. He thought about burning the leaf with a match. The moment that thought entered his mind, before he even moved toward the matches, the plant's electrical activity spiked dramatically. It was as if the plant had read his thoughts. Backster spent the next several years conducting experiments that seemed to prove plants could perceive human intentions, react to threats against other living things, and even respond to emotional states of people around them. He called this phenomenon primary perception, and when he published his findings, the world went crazy. But here's where things get really interesting. When other scientists tried to replicate Baxter's experiments, most of them failed. The scientific community largely rejected his work, calling it unscientific and poorly controlled. Yet, the idea that plants might be conscious beings captured the public imagination and never let go. Fast forward to today, and we're experiencing a renaissance in plant science. Researchers are discovering that plants can learn, remember, communicate with each other, and respond to their environment in ways that were unimaginable just decades ago. They're finding that plants have complex electrical signaling systems, can distinguish between self and other, and even appear to make decisions. But here's the million-dollar question. Does any of this actually prove that plants are conscious? Or are we simply projecting human qualities onto organisms that are fundamentally different from us? During my investigation, I spoke with Dr. Monica Gagliano, a leading researcher in plant behavior who has demonstrated that plants can learn and remember. I also interviewed skeptics who argue that what we're seeing is simply sophisticated biological programming, not true consciousness. The debate is far from settled, and the implications are staggering. Think about it. If plants are truly conscious, what does that mean for how we treat them? What does it mean for agriculture, for vegetarianism, for our entire relationship with the natural world? And if they're not conscious, why are so many people desperate to believe they are? Over the next 3 episodes, I'm going to take you on the same journey I went on. We'll dive deep into Baxter's controversial experiments and examine exactly why they were rejected by mainstream science. We'll explore the cutting edge research that's revealing the true extent of plant capabilities. And we'll grapple with the profound philosophical questions that arise when we consider the possibility of plant consciousness. But first, let me share something personal that happened during my research that made this investigation deeply meaningful to me. 2 weeks into my research, my grandmother passed away. She had been an avid gardener her entire life, and some of my earliest memories were of her talking to her plants as if they were old friends. After her funeral, I found myself in her greenhouse, surrounded by the plants she had loved and cared for decades. Standing there among her orchids and tomatoes, I couldn't help but wonder, had she been onto something all along? Had these plants somehow known her voice, her touch, her presence in a way that science was only beginning to understand? Or was I simply grieving and looking for connection where none existed? That moment crystallized why this investigation matters so much. It's not just about plants, it's about consciousness itself, about what it means to be alive and aware in this world. It's about the possibility that intelligence and perception might exist in forms we've never imagined. The journey I'm about to take you on will challenge everything you think you know about plants, about consciousness, and about the nature of life itself. We'll examine evidence that seems impossible, explore theories that push the boundaries of science, and confront questions that philosophers and scientists have been grappling with for centuries. In the next episode, we're going to dive deep into Cleve Baxter's laboratory and examine his experiments in detail. I'll show you exactly what he claimed to discover, how he conducted his research, and why his findings were so controversial. We'll also explore the fascinating world of plant electrical activity and discover what we actually know about how plants communicate and respond to their environment. But here's what I need you to do right now. Look around you. If you have any plants nearby, really look at them. Consider the possibility that they might be more aware of you than you realize. Consider the possibility that consciousness might not require a brain, that intelligence might not require neurons, and that awareness might exist in forms we're only beginning to understand. Because after 3 months of investigation, I can tell you this. The truth about plant consciousness is far stranger and more wonderful than anything I could have imagined when I started this journey. And it's going to change how you see the world forever.